What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. We are on part 2 of building the Urban Recce rifle. I started this one last video, kind of customizing it how I think it should be set up, and today we're going to add a few more parts to it. I got a bunch of other stuff that we're going to throw on this. If you want to see the other stuff that we added, check out that other video. I'll have it linked below. But this is what we're working with, an AR15 chambered in 5.56, and we've been accessorizing it, changing a few things up, swapping some parts from other guns and things like that to make this a little more specific to its intended purpose. So we're gonna jump over the bench. I'll go through all the new parts that I got for the next phase of this build and go through a few reasons why I picked these parts, and then we'll get this finished up and hit the range. There is one part that I'm still waiting on. They were out of stock, so I'll get one of those coming as soon as they come back in stock. But let's jump to the bench. I'll show you what I got, and we'll get going on finishing out the Urban Recce rifle. Alright guys, here's the rundown of all the other parts that I got for this. First off, I got some Vortex Defender flip caps. These are to cover the lenses on that scope. They just flip open really easily. This will help mitigate any reflection or glare or anything like that to give away your position. So I'm going to be throwing those on. I've got the new Kung Fu grip from trijicon. This one is in black. I really like these. The grip angle is a lot better. It's got a finger groove on the front. The texturing is nice. These are very budget friendly and they are a huge upgrade for your gun. So I'm going to be putting that on, as well as the trijicon Tiger Claw foregrip. Now this can be used as a foregrip or kind of a barricade stop. This is going to be nice for hand placement and for a little bit of a shelf or a claw to pull that gun back into your shoulder a little bit. Along with this Kung Fu grip, I've got this grip plug from trijicon. This goes in the bottom here. Extends the grip a little bit in the back. They had to kind of shave the edge of this because of the angle. I believe that's so you can still get that screw up in there with how the grip angle is, but this goes up in the bottom of that. It's got some room for storage so you can store extra batteries, Allen wrenches, those little tools, stuff like that. So that'll be a nice accessory to have as well. I also got a small piece of Arca rail I'm going to put on this right on the front. So one, I can run this MDT bipod on there, easy adjustment, take it on and off really quick. And two, so I can put this in an Arca compatible tripod if I need to. This is something very small that's not going to hinder you in any way. If I don't need the bipod, I can pull it off and chuck it out of the way, and I'm not even going to notice this on there. So I'm going to be putting that on, and this is that MDT ground pod that I mentioned. Easily adjustable, has a bunch of different angles, things like that. So this is a decent option, and it comes with these little rubber feet on there. Has a little bit of grip on the bottom. And if you remember in the last video, I did mention that I'm going to be using a sling. This is a mag pull sling. This version does come with QD points. It had this one on one end and this one on the other end. I pulled this one off. I'm going to be attaching this directly to the buttstock, looping it through the buttstock. And then I'm going to be using this M-Lock sling point that I bought with a Blue Force Gear U-loop just to try and cut down on some of the noise. Because I want to try and keep this as quiet as possible. I mean, metal on metal, typically things banging around like that can create some noise that is unnecessary. So I'm going to utilize this, and hopefully if you're cruising around packing this thing, we can eliminate some of that noise. Then I'm also going to be using a Sentry strap. This essentially velcros around the handguard. It's got a magnetic keeper. You fold your sling up, put it in there, and close that magnet. It holds it in place nice and tight. And then when you need it, you can just yank on that sling. This magnet releases, lets you deploy the sling, and it's out of the way, keeps everything nice and tight. So we're going to try that out for the sling setup. I also mentioned that I was going to change out that muzzle brake for a flash hider, try and reduce some flash signature, because if I'm not running that suppressor, there's going to be some flash out of that muzzle brake, and this will kind of help eliminate some of that. So I'm going to be swapping that out for this setup. This is a Silencer Co. ASR flash hider. That's the hub mount that I have for my suppressor, so that's why I'm running this one. I've also got the adapter plate from Griffin Armament for that scope mount that I used. This allows me to install it kind of offset on one of those quarters of those scope rings and utilize a red dot for close quarters combat. So I have this trijicon RMR that I've had on a few different guns, and it needs a home, so I'm going to be using that. That way I've got the 3-18 Vortex Strike Eagle scope for longer range stuff, and then I also have the trijicon RMR red dot for close quarters combat if any of those scenarios ever happen. The only thing that I'm missing is a cap for the weapon light. I wanted to get a cap for that. The one that I want is out of stock, so I'll be watching that. I think that'll be the last part that I need to get to finish out this build. And as always, I will have a link in the description that takes you to my website where I create a build page and have more information about all this stuff that I use. So if you guys are wondering what tools I'm using, what products I'm using, I'll have that over at my website, so just follow that link in the description, or I'll throw a QR code up on the screen at various times throughout the video. So if you're watching on a TV or on the computer, you can scan that and go check that stuff out while you're watching the video. But let's get off this bench and get this thing put together. Okay, this is that little adapter plate that's gonna mount on the side of the scope for the RMR. It comes with this adapter plate, some pins and some screws. This is an older version of this scope mount. They have a newer version that's out now. This still mounts up to it. You can see those little holes right here on the sides. They have some kind of locating pins that go in there on the new version, but we're not gonna have to use those for this older version. But I'm gonna get this thrown on as well as that RMR. So these muzzle devices come with a little tube of rock set. This is like a really strong thread locker to lock these on. So when you're unscrewing your suppressor, your muzzle device doesn't come loose. Now before I throw this new grip on, I mentioned in the previous video that there can be some movement between the upper and the lower receiver. This Aero Precision receiver set does have a little bit of that, but there is an adjustment screw on the bottom that essentially when you run it in, it puts pressure on this rear takedown pin and tightens that up. So I'm going to tighten that up really quick before I throw this grip on. You do want to make sure it doesn't put too much pressure on that rear takedown pin to where you can't push it out and break this down if you need to. So what I do is just run it in until it stops, kind of watch the wiggle, double check and make sure you can still push that out while still being kind of firm. I think that's going to do it for me. So I'm going to get the rest of this put together. Well, that's not gonna work. I just realized that the little end on this Blue Force Gear sling strap is too big to go through the eyelet on this M-LOK sling mount. So I'm just gonna pull this off. I'll just run this right through that M-LOK slot to clip it on and see if I can find a different one if I think I need that. So this is one nice thing about this sling, is it's got this little adjustment slider that you can slide up and down very easily. You can easily loosen it up and hang your gun a little lower, or tighten it up, suck it up tight wherever you like your gun to hang. And that Sentry strap is a nice option. Keep your sling tucked away, nice and tight out of the way. You can still use the gun with the sling tightened up in that, but if you need it in a hurry, you can either just grab the sling and pull it away and that Sentry strap lets it loose, or you can just flip the bottom of that. Like I mentioned, it is magnetized, so you can deploy that sling very easily. I'm gonna clean up some of this stuff really quick, and then we'll go over everything that we used on this. Got that MDT ground pod on there. I put that nightstick weapon mounted light on there. That's a pretty nice light. It's the turbo model, so it's a little bit brighter, has more candela, and that came with the pressure pad and with some cable management right there on the side. That all came in the box, so that's a nice feature. One thing that I'm not quite sure of is the activation button for the constant on. That's a little stiff to push. With some practice, I'm sure I'll get it down pretty good, but
that's what she said.
got that on there. And then we also did those flip caps for the scope. So I think those will be a nice addition, keep dust and stuff off there, as well as get rid of some glare and some reflection. And then that Radian safety selector, like I mentioned in the other video, these are one of my favorites. They're not too expensive and they're easy to use. They feel good on the finger. There's no sharp edges or anything like that. So That's the reason I put that on there. And then I've got my anechoic suppressor that I'll be running on this. Very lightweight, titanium, flow-through design. So we'll test that out once we go to the range. And then I'm mounting that using the Silencer Co. ASR Bravo mount. This is hub compatible, so you can use any QD attachment that you want. I chose a Silencer Co. QD mount. And then with tightening up that screw, that tensioning screw, that eliminated any movement between the upper and the lower. So that's nice, get rid of one rattle there. And to be honest, I think the only thing left that I need to get is that flashlight cover to cover up the lens on that, get rid of some of that glare so you're not giving away your position if you ever had to use this as a recce rifle or you're out patrolling around doing stuff like that. So I'll for sure get one of those. But now that we got this thing together, I say we hit the range, get it sighted in, and do some shooting. So it's winter time here, and the only option I have right now is going to the indoor range. But we got over there, this thing ran flawlessly. I had zero hiccups, zero malfunctions. The only issue that I ran into is once I put the suppressor on, it was pretty gassy. When I went to adjust some things, I realized that I'd made a mistake. This thing doesn't have an adjustable gas block like I thought I put on here, so I'm gonna have to get one of those so I can adjust that and kind of tune it a little bit. That's the only thing that I need to change on this. As you can see from the footage, it's a pretty soft shooting gun, stays pretty flat, and I think this is gonna be awesome for its intended purpose. It did take me a little bit to get this scope sighted in because, well, I had this on another gun and it was sighted in for that gun. Had a different mount and everything. This mount has some elevation built into it, so it took me a minute to get things kind of adjusted where I needed it to be. But once I get the scope sighted in, it was hitting within a quarter size circle on that target at 100 yards. That's where I sighted this in as 100 yard, and then I sighted in that RMR red dot at 20 yards. I think those will be good baselines, so I'm gonna roll with it. Again, the only thing that I need to do to this is get an adjustable gas block so I can adjust that, make it a little less gassy, and also order that light cover once those come back in stock. So I'll get those ordered up, get them thrown on here, and make sure you stay tuned because once it warms up around here, it's winter time right now, but once it warms up, I'll be getting up to my property and I'll make sure and do an update video on this and do a little better footage of shooting this thing. Make sure you check out the link in the description for the whole build list on this. I'll also make sure and throw that QR code up so you guys can go over there, check out all the parts that I used on this. Check out the Ballistically Challenge merchandise because no one can have too many t-shirts. But as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll check you guys on the next one.